And yes, go right ahead, Councilmember.
Kicked it over to you.
If you give me 1 second, I think I am having some audio issues. I believe you can hear me. Is that right? Okay, I can't hear you, but I'll just go ahead. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councilmember Zachary Parker. I have the privilege of representing Ward 5 on the DC Council. I'm thrilled to be here with you all tonight and join DDOT for this kickoff of the South Dakota Avenue Safety Project. I just wanted to generally frame how we got to this point and what the goal of this entire effort is and what it is not. So last year, I was able to secure funding in the fiscal year 24 budget to improve safety on South Dakota Avenue. South Dakota remains among the most dangerous roadways in Ward 5. And repeatedly, annually, Ward 5, Ward 7, Ward 8 are amongst the areas of our city that sees the highest levels of traffic violence and deaths. I committed when running for office, and I remain committed to improving traffic safety in our community. And that is the goal of tonight's meeting and this entire safety project. It is around improving safety on South Dakota Avenue for our community members, neighbors that live along South Dakota, and everyone that travels along that corridor. DDOT will have tonight's meeting. We will also meet in person this Saturday. You will see more information about that. If you are not able to provide feedback in either of these two formats, there will be opportunities for you to share and provide feedback on the project moving forward over the next month or so. And it is important to underscore that there have been no decisions yet. The decision up until this point is that we are going to conduct a study of what can and cannot be done with South Dakota, and that there will be some effort to improve safety along the corridor. I know there may be a lot of chatter or misinformation around plans that have already been determined, but it's important to underscore that no decisions have been made. The reason for tonight's meeting, as well as on Saturday, is to hear from the community about what you experience on the corridor and what would you like to see. DDOT will walk us through their timeline, and this will be a dynamic and iterative process. Last thing I would just say is in this year's budget, I secured additional funding for a study of Michigan Avenue. And it's in the same spirit of improving safety on Ward 5's most dangerous corridors. I want to thank DDOT for their partnership. I want to thank Director Kirschbaum, who could not join tonight, but she will be in person on Saturday. I have found her and the entire DDOT team to be great partners, not only just with this project, but with a number of efforts across our community as I, again, am keeping traffic safety as a top priority of mine. With that, members of my team are joining. I will stick on for a little bit, but we'll hop off. I too will be in person on Saturday. If you or another neighbor are not able to stay for the entire time or can't provide feedback in these two formats, we will share more information, and by we, DDOT will put out information. My team via our newsletter, our website will also share how you can provide feedback. Just tomorrow, my team will be canvassing up and down South Dakota to make sure we're reaching seniors and others. We don't want this to be a secret. There's no ball being hidden. We want everybody to have their voice heard so that we can all be proud of the finished product on the other side. I'm going to stop there. Christine, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you all are in very capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Go ahead and share again.
Christine, before you get started on the presentation, I guess where we should have started and noted for everyone is that, and let me turn my camera on so you can see my face, is that this meeting is being recorded and required by DC Code 2-578. This meeting is will be available to the public. But note that if you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You may enter any questions or comments in the chat. We will be monitoring. And then if you'd like to have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and then we'll call on to you to ask questions. If you're on the phone, you may dial *3, and then your hand is going to be raised, and then you can go on off mute and then ask your question. Just wanted to disclose that.
Thank you, Syra. Okay, so this is our agenda for this evening. You've just heard from Councilmember Parker. We'll go through the background of the project, a little bit more of where this has come from, what we've been doing since we started the fiscal year and got these funds, looking at existing conditions, outlining the scope of our project, the needs for the project, and then some street configuration options that we'll be studying, as well as some intersection options that we'll be looking into further, our project process, and then we'll go into Q&A and discussion. Okay, so back in May of 2023, there was a community walk and a site walk with DDOT staff and the council member and his staff, as well as some key members of the community who are raising safety concerns along South Dakota Avenue. There were hundreds of traffic safety inputs that have been put into our system for us to look at specific spot safety treatments. They, along the corridor, noted speeding and red light running concerns, difficulty reaching parks and schools, that crosswalks and crossings were either not present, uncontrolled, or had multiple lanes, or even at our signalized intersections were difficult to get across. The signal timing had some issues and challenges. Left and right turn lanes may be needed, or the timing for those. Bus stop relocation and tree trimming were also noted at that site walk. More background. So in the FY24 budget, this is some of the text that was in writing, but the council member put in the funds for us to look at safety improvements along the corridor, possibly a road diet, and recommends considering 2 of these segments. What we thought as DDOT is to look at this and come up with a holistic study end to end, and then build what we could with the funds that we had. So highlighting here that our high injury network includes roads in Ward 5. It does not include South Dakota Avenue, but South Dakota Avenue does intersect with Rhode Island Avenue and Bladensburg Road in our study area, which are high injury network corridors. So it's an opportunity to improve those intersections. Going into our existing conditions. So the travel conditions for our residents, about 28% of households have no access to a vehicle on a daily basis. We see from traffic counts, average annual daily traffic is anywhere between 11,000 and 20,000 between different segments in the corridor. So at the lowest, about 11,000, at the highest point within Bladensburg to Riggs Road, about 20,000. We see more residents in the community, however, do drive to work and have longer commutes. This may be due to working outside of DC or across the city and other areas. For pedestrian conditions, we do see continuous sidewalks across the street, but many uncontrolled and unmarked crosswalks along the corridor. We have trail and bike connections that are existing and future. So Riggs Road, we'll have a bicycle connection from the Met Branch Trail over to, I believe, South Dakota, the Met Branch Trail itself, working on Taylor Street as well in this coming fiscal year, and then Bladensburg Road as well coming up. On-street parking, we know is often unsigned or peak hour restricted. So this is something that's been raised as a concern. It's inconsistent across the corridor. So what this tells us is that given the commute patterns that we see on the screen, about a third of residents don't have access to a car, so they're using public transportation close to the rate that we see across DC. And then some are using Ubers, Lyfts. Fewer residents walk here, partially because it's not a job center, but it's also difficult to walk across the street. And fewer residents cycle here because of a few factors, I'm sure, but one of them is lack of facilities, maybe few and far between bike share stations, and so on. So it's an opportunity to look at different improvements for all of these modes. So the land use on the corridor, it's mostly residential, but there are a few key destinations and schools along the corridor. So really what this tells us is sort of a planner way to say this South Dakota being a major commuter route and handling the amount of traffic that it does is really not set for the context of a neighborhood. So it becomes a barrier for the community crossing or getting to and from their destinations safely. So you see a number of schools along the corridor, and that presents vulnerable road users with children, families trying to walk and cross the street and access the schools, parks, and so on. So our project purpose, need, and scope. So the issues that we've heard so far on South Dakota Avenue are speeding. We've already got a high coverage of our automated traffic enforcement cameras that have qualified for enforcement along the corridor. We'll go into that in a little more detail in the next coming slides. But we see lower traffic in the off-peak condition, either midday or overnight outside of commuting hours, which can lead to speeding because we've still got a wide open road. Crashes at the high entry network intersections, we see a high rate in these specific spots, as well as other key spots along the corridor. There's a high risk. There's risky conditions with the crosswalks that are needing safety treatments, especially those near schools, and residents would like better access to schools, metro stations, bus stops, and parks. All of this impacts quality of life. So the residential community, it can be pretty noisy over here. Just walking the corridor myself on an average day, there's a lot of traffic noise that occurs, and also being able to access your destinations along the corridor as well. And then future bus service, you all may be aware that WMATA has been redoing the bus network. And so WMATA is adding some bus service along South Dakota Avenue as part of its year one network redesign. We do have this active online map. I'll show you all how to use it a little bit later in the presentation, but the QR code is there. You can go in and drop comments along the corridor and let us know if we're missing anything or key intersections. So what are we doing with these funds? How are we going to use the $1 million that the council member has put in? So our current scope is to study the corridor from Bladensburg Road up to South Dakota, or to Riggs Road along South Dakota, and analyze 3 concepts that are end to end. And these are different configurations for a road diet. We'll then get community feedback on those concepts, select a final concept based on evaluation factors and our input, and then develop a cost estimate for the entire corridor, and then design and build a segment of the project as much as we can for the remaining budget that we have available. Our future scope, if we were able to get additional funding, we can build out the remaining pieces of the corridor up to Riggs Road. And our intention is to start at Bladensburg and then move northward as much as we can, because we see the most crashes, as you'll see in the very next slide, in this segment particularly. Just a note on the scope, this is not a streetscape project, so you won't see us moving curb lines or doing really extensive work behind the curb. This is really just focused between the curbs and potentially installing a few new signals that will pass the tests. So in terms of crash history, from 2018 to 2023, the last 5 years of data that we have, there's about a little over 1,000 crashes total, 433 injuries, 3 fatalities that have happened, 3 deaths that we've lost neighbors and residents. There's 32 pedestrians that have been struck and then cyclists as well, total. About 25 of those pedestrians, 9 bicyclists. Total crashes are decreasing over time. When we install those ATE cameras, it really does slow people down. They're very effective at that. And it's reducing overall crashes, but still, we're committed to Vision Zero as a district, as an agency. So even one fatality, one serious injury is too many. So we see fatal crashes occurring at Perry Street, one at Bladensburg Road, and then one at Ingraham back in 2022. So we've had one per year in the previous few years. Our crash hotspots, as you can maybe see from the map, Michigan Avenue is one starting here kind of in the middle of the corridor. This is Rhode Island Avenue here, and then Bladensburg Road you see is a really big hotspot. There's a few smaller ones as you come up Gallatin, up here as you approach the metro station, and then up near Riggs as well. The speeding issues that we see, so currently there's 7 speed cameras and 1 red light camera along the corridor. This is a map taken directly from our ATE website, so it's ate.dc.gov. At that hub site, you can see all of the camera locations across the district. Just want to plug that. So if you're interested in seeing where all of our cameras are, you can take a look there. Lots of information on that website. But when we did the study for each of these locations, the majority of drivers we found through the data that we collected were traveling 10 miles per hour or more over the posted speed limit, and that's a huge problem for the corridor. We found that northwestbound drivers going north towards Riggs on the corridor reach higher speeds on average than southeastbound drivers, likely due to the commuting patterns that we see. And then after each of the cameras were installed, all these locations near the cameras, we get really high rates of compliance and much lower speeds. So in kind of a yearly breakdown, what we see is actually the school-based congestion that happens near Sojourner Truth is actually helping with keeping speeding lower. But during the summer months when school is not in session, the summer break, you can see that the citation rate goes up. So it helps to slow people down. Looking at overall crashes, these are the common crash types that you see, and these are pretty typical for a regular 4-lane roadway. So you see a lot of rear ends, a lot of side swipes, and a lot of left turn crashes. These are mostly due to left turns. So if you can imagine somebody stopped in that kind of center lane, waiting to make their left turn, someone is coming right up behind them, either doesn't see them in time and causes a rear end, or goes around them or attempts to go around them too late. And that's the side swipe crash that you get. Right angle crashes, also a factor of having uncontrolled intersections with multiple lane crossings. And so we see a few more of those statistics as well. This is the bus service that's expected to come to South Dakota Avenue in the next year in FY25, which we will start in September. So WMATA will start rerouting buses and changing bus lines and setting bus stops. So we're going to work very closely with them. We've got great connections through our bus team to determine where those bus stops are going to go, what's the most efficient placement for them, and then how we can design the street with the new bus service in mind. So looking at things like bus bulbs, bus zones along the curb, queue jumps to help those buses be really efficient, and then transit signal priority as well. So that's existing conditions and kind of what's been happening on the corridor so far. What we found, our street configuration options. These are the 3 possible options for us to study over the next few months that we'll be looking into. If you have other ideas, you can certainly put them into the chat. But these are the 3 major options that we saw that we could move forward with and study and analyze. So the very first one, option 1, would be a simple diet of converting the curbside lanes to parking full time, installing curb extensions and things to make sure that crosswalks are visible. And then the center space, could either be turn pockets where they're needed or median crossing islands to help pedestrians get across the street more efficiently and safely. The next option maintains parking on one curb line, but then converts the other curb line to a two-way protected facility for bicyclists. We'd still be able to get in turn lanes to make sure that people can make their turns efficiently and safely, and then switch off the curbside lane or the turn lane with a median refuge island if that's needed, like places near the school. And then the last one would be to look at protected facilities that are directional along either curbside. And then the center lane would be used for turn pockets or median refuge islands in a similar fashion. Looking at intersections, so there's a couple options for how we can improve safety for the intersections. So one is just signalizing and studying for a signal to see if it meets any kind of warrant. And warrants are these studies that has to, an intersection has to pass about 9 tests or warrants to see if it would qualify for a signal. This is a federal process, it's federal guidelines. We do have a little bit of flexibility with engineering judgment, but we really want to make sure that's the effective tool that we're applying to the location. However, there's other options for this. So like Otis right now, South Dakota and Otis, you can take this intersection as an example. So in the yellow, that's just installing a signal. What that might look like is a kind of a typical intersection design. But if we wanted to say, look at some access management where maybe drivers can't go all the way through Otis, we could install a hardened median through the intersection of Otis Street, make it right in and right out only, not allow left turns, and also, but still allow pedestrians to cross here. That helps with maybe some neighborhood concerns of regional drivers coming through from Maryland or Virginia, just cutting through the neighborhood for their routes. So these are the types of options that we could look at for these uncontrolled locations. The skewed intersections that we have along the corridor, like this one here at 20th in South Dakota near the rec center. So in the yellow, we can just look at our typical treatments here, turn restrictions, turn timing for it, and further signalization. Or we can look at things like closing a short block, extending parks where they're present, or creating little parklets along the corridor just to simplify the intersection as well. So option one here with just parking as the use on the curbside, it would be similar for the curbside bike lanes as well in terms of design, and then what it may look like with a two-way protected facility on one curb line. So our upcoming process and engagement. So here's where you can expect to hear from us further in the future. So we're here now. Tonight talking will be at the Sojourner Truth School on Saturday morning from 10 to 12, the open house style. So you can drop in whenever you're available and get all of the information that you're getting here tonight, but you can talk to staff in person if you'd like. There as well. We'll present all of the same stuff that you're seeing tonight, same level of detail. We just want to make sure that we have this in-person opportunity for folks that couldn't attend tonight. Then we'll move into concept options. So the options that I showed you earlier as kind of theoretical, we'll apply those to the street even further, see what that does to the traffic conditions, see what it does to our signalizing, our signal progression and traffic progression, and then safety as well. Evaluate it based on those key goals that we've heard from the community, how it reduces speeding, how it improves crossing conditions, different things like that. Then we'll have another set of public meetings to show what we have found for each option, pros and cons on each side. and then move into a final concept. We'll get the feedback from you all from the second round and all of the concepts, move into the final concept design, select a concept, and move that forward to a detailed analysis, provide a cost estimate, so that way we know how much it's going to cost for each signal to be included, what the full design may look like in the future. And then select a segment, how much we can actually build for the remaining budget that we have at the time. We'll move into design, design that one segment, and then go and issue a notice of intent, that's NOI, for the project segment. Those are posted publicly, and then you can provide further comments on the design. And then we'll construct. That'll be probably about summer 2025. All of this is pending project process and key milestones, but this is our targeted timeline for the project. Future construction is also weather dependent, so we need some really good weather to be able to install the designs and the markings and things as we move forward. In the future, we'll be looking for future design and construction funding so that we can install the remaining amount the project. So who else is DDOT going to talk to besides residents and besides people who are here tonight? ANCs, of course. Then we'll visit our advisory committees, the Multimodal Advisory Committee, Accessibility Advisory Committee, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, Bicycle Advisory Committee, Commission on Aging, schools, our faith-based institutions along the corridor, fire and EMS, Metropolitan Police Department, WMATA, of course, for the bus coordination, the hospitals and senior centers, our civic associations as well, Howard University, and future plans for the Divinity campus, Ward 5 Family Biking, and then the Friends of South Dakota Avenue group that has formed for this project. If there are other groups that you don't see on this list that you'd like us to engage with, please drop those in the chat so that we're aware and we can follow up with those. So our next steps, we have this online feedback map, and I will pull that up and see how to submit your comments. So this is a mapping platform. You'll see everything through here. This is the map that shows up. So what you can do is up here, yours won't have quite as many features, but you'll have the comment section right here. You'll click on that, and then you can come down here, post your comment, and then type whatever you want and post it to the corridor. And it's as simple as that. You can post as many or as few comments as you want, and let us know if you have any other feedback that you should know about. We'll continue engagement. Like I said, you can expect to hear from us again in the fall once we complete the study of these few concepts. A project website will be coming soon. We'll house all the information through here, and then we'll continue engagement throughout the process. So that's what I have. I will stop sharing and then go to question and answer.
There is a lot of chatter on the chat. We've been trying to answer questions as they come, but there are just conversations that are going on. So if anyone is interested in asking a specific question to the DDOT staff, please, you could raise your hand and then we'll call you.
Yeah, I see one, Jared, is he?
Mm-hmm.
Is he able to unmute?
Jared, are you able to unmute, or we'll make sure to unmute you if you can. Dixon, for now, I see your hand is raised as well. Are you able to unmute?
Here, Dominica, can you?
Okay. Dominica, are you able to unmute Dixon?
Or Jared Rizzi?
I'm unmuted if that's helpful now.
Oh, great. Okay.
Hi, I'm a 10-year resident right off of Riggs at Nicholson. I cross South Dakota as a pedestrian 4 times a day, as a walking parent to DC bilingual. The pedestrian crossing at Riggs in South Dakota is everything that people in the chat are saying. I wanted to ask a couple quick questions about the scope of DDOT, especially the between the curbs. I'm thinking specifically along the lines of something like the library, the Huff Library at Kennedy Street. There's an Exxon station across the street, the library. There's street side parking that goes right up to South Dakota Avenue. Is the road diet, is it the curbs of South Dakota? So, because I'm thinking if there were considerations for daylighted street parking right off of South Dakota, those turns, especially off and onto South Dakota, could be made much safer, particularly in an area like at the library, where there's a lot of small children traffic and a lot of other public engagement traffic. I have other questions, but I'm sure other people do. Definitely want to support the red light camera at South Dakota and Riggs. It's would make me feel a lot safer.
So to answer your question, yes, we are looking at the side street approaches for a few, like 100 feet or so, because we realize that the safety of those also affects the safety of the mainline corridor for South Dakota. So yes, we will be considering safety treatments on the side streets as well.
Does that include daylighting of street parking?
It does, absolutely, yes.
With physical barriers?
We would have to do it with flex posts, given our budget limits, but yes, it would include hardening those with the flex posts and paint and signs, yeah.
That would be enormous, thank you.
Should we move to Nikita Dixon?
Donica, are you able to unmute? I think Dixon was next. Okay, or Caitlin, or just whoever. If you see the list, if you can begin to unmute them.
The 3 options that we were given, in trying not to be biased, 2 of the options included bike lanes. How come we weren't given more options? Because it seems like if we're not voting for bike lanes, then it only leaves 1 option for us to choose from. And it seems like that is a little more biased towards bikes by giving them more options to choose from.
I missed the beginning of your question. Could you say it again? Sorry. She's able to come back. If not, I think I got the gist. So those are the 3 options generally for a road diet that we look at, just ways of providing a lane of traffic for vehicles northbound, southbound. There are options that maintain street parking and then another utilization of the space. This is corridor, because of the limited bus service, even in the future condition, wouldn't necessarily warrant bus lanes or dedicated bus lanes. So it's a bit limited in how we can effectively make a road diet happen and to the spirit of the road diet and make it safer and slow speeds without using the street in other ways. So option one had parking for the curbside usage, center turn lanes, and then a travel lane in each direction. So definitely considering that. If that parking isn't utilized all the time, I'm sure you all have seen, parking lanes can be used by some risky drivers as passing lanes. So we want to make sure if we do implement a concept like that, that the parking is used and that it's not going to just become another passing lane. The other options are just other street configuration options. If people have other ideas for ways to use the 4 lanes in a different way, please let us know. We're happy to add one of those at least. Yeah. And I will add, we are considering bike lanes for South Dakota Avenue because in Move DC, which is our the district's long range transportation plan, it was noted as a bicycle priority corridor as part of the network for Ward 5. So we're taking that as a consideration, but it's clearly not the only option that we have on the table. Option one has no bike lanes at all. Okay, our next, Jessica Campbell.
Oh, hi. I have been unmuted, so I'm assuming it's my turn. This is Caitlin. Just wanted to lift up this, the intersection and crosswalk at South Dakota and Rhode Island as a real concern. There's a retaining wall there. When cars are speeding south on South Dakota, especially making a right turn from Rhode Island, it's very dangerous. I had one situation where I was pushing a stroller and thank goodness a Metro bus pulled out in front of a car trying to take a right turn around them that otherwise would have hit me. So I think this is, there've been some attempts to make that a safer crosswalk, but it's too far south of the intersection and there's a lot of speeding cars. So I'd just love to explore options there. I've made some 311 requests, but understand that it's a process.
Yes, and we'll be looking at all of the traffic safety requests that we've gotten so far along the corridor and trying to include those, as many of those as we can in this as well. Thank you.
How do you plan to address the other side streets? If South Dakota is more congested, I've always noticed that side streets also become affected from that congestion on South Dakota. So how will that be addressed?
Yeah, so part of our traffic analysis will see where we see more congestion happening with these different design options. And so with that, we know if there's a chance for vehicles, especially commuters, to peel off and go through the neighborhoods, they likely will because of Waze routing. But we have treatments that we can use. We'll look at the side streets, those first blocks, to see if we need to install things like speed humps or look at things like I showed earlier. Let me see if I can share my screen again. There we go. I think if you all can see that, where we maybe do kind of a block it off for through traffic. That's also an option. So really looking at all of the options to address a diversion and traffic on side streets that may be going way too fast.
Can we get the next person unmuted?
Yes, this is Carmen Williams. Good evening. Christina, thank you so much for your presentation. I do have a question in reference to the egress. After 9/11, South Dakota Avenue was designated as a major evacuation route. What's going to happen with this if there are bike lanes placed on South Dakota Avenue?
Yeah, so part of this is talking to our fire and EMS sister agency and our partners over there, and then talking to our internal staff who are emergency management planning to see how they think it might affect long-term, big event evacuation routes. So they'll be included in this. There will still be the ability to move through there. So we'll include their comments and them in the process.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so apologies. Yeah. So one of the things which I didn't see in the consideration is the crossing from around our place by Galloway and Gallatin. This is an incredibly busy section, both in terms of the foot traffic for the neighborhood from North Michigan Park, people who are going to the metro, plus we have a daycare there and several schools which are across South Dakota. I personally had to cross this section multiple times with my child, and on several occasions drivers just don't stop on a red light. I wonder if there is any plans for this particular of the study. I mean, it's like with the metro and the traffic which is coming from there, it's just incredibly bad actually crossing pedestrian side. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we'll be looking for treatments up there as well. Absolutely.
DW, you are unmuted.
Yes. Can you put up the options again? 1 through 3? Several people have asked in the chat and still not up. And are those the only options? No, not the intersections. Is that the...
1 second, sorry. Good. Okay, so the options that we will be studying, again, we have not studied them yet, are these. So the first option is 3 lanes. So a lane northbound, a lane southbound, turn lanes in the middle, and then where we need crossing islands, putting those in, and then curbside would be designated for parking. That's the first option. Second option is looking at similar road diet, but 1 curb would be used for protected bike lane, 2-way. The opposite curb could be full-time parking, and then a travel lane in each direction, where we don't need a turn lane. We don't need.
So when you say parking, parking's not currently allowed on South Dakota Avenue, so that would be new?
Correct, yes.
I think we've seen this during our initial assessment of South Dakota. I think there's some portions of South Dakota that has some parking. And so this is part of the assessment, right? And part of our in-depth analysis of South Dakota is just where that parking is allowed, where is it not, how is it working? And I think somebody in the chat just said like it's also allowed on Sundays. So just really taking a look at that curbside management, so that we have a full understanding of South Dakota's capacity. So these are just options that are, as Christine had noted, that are typically reviewed under a road diet. But it doesn't mean like we're not telling you, like we're gonna go out there tomorrow and install this. Right. This is not at all. This is also when we're not voting on an option right now. This is just kind of like general information for you, just to have an understanding of like what is a road diet, what can you maybe see in like different road diet projects, and what we're going to be studying. So right now it's really just doing an in-depth analysis of South Dakota so that we have a full understanding of how it works.
Yeah, and we know how it works right now. So, you know, maintaining the 4 lanes in this 4-lane section, we know how it works. We know that you've told us there's problems with speeding and crossing the street, and so on. So these are options for reconfiguring the street so that we can slow drivers down. We can make it a little bit safer for everybody, reduce the number of crashes, and hopefully have better safety outcomes, have fewer of our neighbors and families injured. So that's option 1. This is option 2. And then the third option would be directional bike lanes. These are, again, typical road diet configurations that you see outside of having a dedicated bus lane for one of these, which this street would not qualify for. Okay. Now we'll keep these up as more people unmute. It looks like we can't unmute some of the folks that are maybe.
I got unmuted and I was in line, if you would like me
Okay,
to.
great.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm a mom in Ward 5. I've lived here for 22 years. I am a driver. And one of the things that stands out to me is that on streets where there's bike lanes and cars, especially with flexi posts, I've seen this across DC. I think about like K Street or even Florida. Cars pull over and block the bike lanes, and the drivers have to go into the main road. I'm like the bikers then have to go in the main road. And one time I saw a dad with a kid in a trailer and a bike actually get flipped into traffic, the kid. Anyways, point being, my question for DDOT and folks talking about the road diet is, as a driver, I worry about the mixing of bikes and cars, and I wonder why there's not an option, and especially with the deaths, if there would be an option to completely shut down South Dakota for car access. Thank you.
So removing all travel lanes and converting it to something else? Is that what you're asking?
Like more green space to reduce the heat islands, more park space for seniors to be able to like sit out and play checkers, more mini parks, more space for, if like restaurants or pop-ups, splash pads.
Gotcha.
Bike lanes, just using it for more community space rather than trying to cram cars and bikes.
Yeah, there are options for creating that. So I think some of the comments that you've heard from others, this is, houses front on this. So the purpose of streets is to provide access and mobility to people living along the corridor, traveling along the corridor, and throughout the city. So we really try to maintain the access there, because some people don't have alley access and this is their main way to get to their homes. But we can find opportunities, like I showed you here, for some of these side streets at really complex or skewed intersections. Maybe it doesn't serve the community well to have all of the approaches open for traffic. Maybe in certain locations, we can create those spaces that are like little parklets or things like that. But the purpose of the study is to look for ways to improve the corridor and create more of a street that feels like it's appropriate for the neighborhood setting, and not so much of a speedway.
I really appreciate that. And I know that there have been other cities that have been able to shut down roads entirely to through traffic, but still allow cars to park. I think this is some of what you see at Union Market, where there's places where like a car can pull up and stop, but it's not necessarily a like highway through the community. But anyways, again, thank you guys so much for getting community input. And as a Ward 5 mom and driver, I really appreciate the chance to weigh in.
Thank you. What's our next? Jessica has been waiting for a while. Jessica Campbell. There's a couple others, Sharon and so on. Good work on getting those folks unmuted. But Brooke, I see that you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes, hi, I'm one of the organizers of Ward 5 Family Bike, and I just wanted to thank you specifically and DDOT for taking a look at this hyper dangerous roadway. We design family bike rides in Ward 5 for Ward 5 families. And we always have to cross roadways like South Dakota and Michigan. And it's so dangerous that we have to have police escort with flashing lights and sirens most of the time that we are biking. So options 2 and 3 would be phenomenal improvements to better connect Ward 5 so that people who live in residential areas like Queens Chapel, like Woodridge, can cross into the areas where there are more commercial parts. I have seen businesses here like Right Proper and the owner of Metro Bar and Lost Gen saying how instrumental Ward 5 clients have been for their businesses, and that furthermore, more and more people are arriving by a bike. So I really appreciate the opportunity to opine, and thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you. Okay, let me see if I can get you. Jessica, I think you were able to unmute. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So my
Oh no.
Okay, now I think I'm unmuted. So my question is just with respect to the northern segment of South Dakota Avenue. I understand it's part of the study area, but has funding been secured for future construction for I guess the more northern end of South Dakota?
So because of the crash history, we wanted to focus on the top safety need along the corridor first. So we were going to start at Bladensburg. Clearly, there's that crash hotspot here, and then go northward as much as we could. We will look at the rest of it as more funding is available.
Okay, so I guess what I'm just trying to understand is, are you anticipating that there may be need for future advocacy for additional funding to implement any changes on the northern side?
We would need future funding to complete the project up to rigs, yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And thank you so much to you and the other DDOT public servants for hearing us out tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. Sharon or Sharon?
Yep, I'm the one. Can you hear me?
Great, yes.
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. So I have been one of the founding members of Friends of South Dakota Avenue Northeast that has lobbied, campaigned, testified, showed up across the last 2 years, and worked with Councilmember Parker's office and DDOT to get us to this point. What I see here in the chat group especially is some concern that, bike lanes should not be admitted. They are, not safe. There's a lot of noise. And what I do want to continue to emphasize here is we are not asking to get rid of cars. We are only asking to share a lane. And this is an important equity issue for so many residents in Ward 5, including me, who cannot drive as I'm visually impaired, but 28% of our neighbors do not drive, and there are no other ways to get around South Dakota. So I would love to better understand, DDOT, if you see equity and parity being just as important in road design as I do, and I would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, so when we approach a corridor safety project and a road diet like this, we do look at the best ways to serve all modes. And that includes people riding transit, which I went back to this slide to emphasize about what we see from residents along the corridor. About 41% get to work with transit, whether that's getting to the metro station at Fort Totten or using one of the bus stops that's existing across the corridor. We do want to serve those users much better than they are now, provide that better access to bus stops. But bicycling as well, we've heard from the constituency of the community that would love to see bicycle facilities on South Dakota Avenue and have it be a safe place to bike, similar to walking and crossing the street, having that being a safe place to walk and cross the street. So driving is not the only thing that we look at. We do want to improve safety for drivers as well. We know that a lot of the crashes that occur on the street are with drivers and car to car. So all of this is taken into account, and we want to design a street that's best for all modes, and really include that that equity component. That's a big commitment that DDOT has made with Move DC and how we make our decisions, and emphasizing public transit is one key way to do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Let's go with Ms. Roxanne. Okay, you should be open to share your comment or question.
Okay, I think one of mine might have been, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. One of the questions I asked about, there was a safety study done in about 2006, and it was another one done somewhere between 2006 and 2010. I want to know, did y'all look at those studies, and will there or was there any comparison? That's
We
my
did
first
look
question.
at, yes, thank you for that. We did look at those studies. The treatments that were recommended there were either never funded or may not be quite relevant now. We've seen a lot of development on the corridor, especially on the northern end. And then another piece of the study was further down near Costco and the New York Avenue interchange. There was a study down there. So we want to sort of take those as a reference and then refresh the study. It won't be as in-depth because we do want to try and implement some safety treatments as quickly as we can. We know clearly from the crash data, there's a high rate of crashes on the corridor. I'll go back to that slide. But we do want to study it, use it as a reference, and then move on and kind of update what the vision is for the corridor in the future.
So I'm hearing you say, yes, you have looked at it and you will
Yes.
use some of the recommendations in it?
Yes, if they have not been implemented yet. Yes, we'll look at those and see if they make sense for today's corridor.
Okay, there's the other question I have is still a safety concern, and I think someone might have put it in the chat, and it's in reference to if you're going to take out a lane, how would that affect the area, especially for emergency vehicles, buses, and how would the affect how would that affect the congestion? Will it make it worse? You should know whether it will propose more. And segue on that is another safety concern, and that is the air quality. Want to know if you've done an air quality analysis, because Ward 5 has the worst air quality, and in our area is even the worst of Ward 5.
Thank you. So there's a few questions that you had in there. So fire and EMS are part of our key stakeholders on the project. So we will review any and all designs with them right after this meeting coming up in the next month. We'll have these targeted meetings with fire and EMS and some of these other sister agencies that will be key stakeholders on this. And getting around. WMATA will be a key stakeholder on this because they are adding Bus service to the corridor, as I showed a little bit earlier. I'll go back to that one. So that's here. They'll be a key stakeholder as well. But what we saw from the traffic analysis, we did just with the traffic data that we have from pre-COVID times, and looking at it, just if we just take out a lane, it's agnostic to whether we use it for parking or bike lanes or whatever. What we saw was this is squarely in the range for a road diet. So let's see if I get to that traffic data that we had here earlier. 11,000 to 20,000. So that's anything below 20,000 is squarely in the federal highway guidance for considering a road diet. It does say as you get closer to 20,000, you need to do a corridor analysis. That is what we're doing to determine what signal changes may be needed, what other accommodations, what turn lanes would be most feasible to help with operations of the corridor. But all of this is included and part of the study and analysis that we do. Did I address all your questions? I think maybe I missed one.
No, the last one was about safety concerns as far as the air quality.
Air quality. So we are, as part of this, required to complete an environmental document, and that is run through our environmental process with our internal staff, and then we communicate that with Federal Highway. So the environmental issues are absolutely part of it, and we consider that through the process as well.
So therefore, if you're slowing down the traffic or making more congestion, how would that affect the worst air quality that already exists?
So often what we see is when we slow down traffic, it's not, if people are just operating slowly, they're not actually using more fuel. Now, if people are idling, what we see is traffic doesn't just everybody try and use the same roadway. Oftentimes people will find different routes. We hope people will consider other options if transit is better, if other options are better. But we don't tend to see the increases in air quality issues due to road diets that may be expected. So we do consider that it's part of it, and we'll continue to monitor it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Paul, Kiernan, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, I'm just calling to reiterate the concern that's been raised about the intersection of Riggs Road and South Dakota Avenue Northeast. I, like many others on this call, I think, cross that intersection every day as a pedestrian, and I have to wait for the cars to finish running the red light, turning left onto Riggs from South Dakota before I can step into the crosswalk. My ANC and the neighborhood have been requesting a traffic camera there for several years now. And I'd like to kind of hear if there's a timeline for that. And then beyond that, you know, I would support more bike infrastructure on South Dakota Avenue.
Thank you. So the camera, I'll have to check with our ATE team. We do conduct assessments for each location to determine whether it's feasible or not. Currently, all of our cameras across the city are in use, so we don't have any spare ones that we can just kind of implement. But I'll take a look and I'll check in with our ATE team. And if you can provide your email in the chat or just to me, I'll follow up with you.
Thanks.
Right. Go to Sarah Wilkinson.
Hey there. Thank you for this really thoughtful presentation. I'm really pleased to see the options, although I do have a concern about option 1 with the parking lane. Just from living here and experiencing South Dakota, it seems that a lot of the residents and homes along South Dakota have off-street parking. So my concern with option 1 is that it would be underutilized and it would actually create more dangerous driving behavior because aggressive drivers would use the space between cars to pass and cut over. There would be more instances of road rage. So I wanted to officially voice my preference for option 3 or option 2. And also just a couple points that I wanted to make. I live right off South Dakota off of Taylor Street, and my son used to attend a school at 1800 Perry Street. And when we were walking there, our most direct route would have been South Dakota. However, it was too dangerous. I was terrified every day that a car was going to fly off the roadway and hit us on the sidewalk. Same with walking to Rita's, same with walking to Mr. Carl's or his and hers right off Rhode Island. We take the longer route of walking out of our way down 18th to avoid South Dakota because it is too dangerous. So thank you for putting the time to do these studies. The residents really appreciate it. I also wanted to share a story about a neighbor of ours who moved about 3 years ago across South Dakota into what is called Woodridge. And all of the neighbors at her going away party were like, "You're only moving a mile away. We're going to see you all the time." We have seen her one time in the 3 years that she moved, and it was when we dropped off some furniture that she was getting from us, because it is so scary to cross that road. It feels like you're entering a different part of the city when really we are all neighbors. We should be joined together. So I think that this project is really important and I really hope it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's move to Jeanette Mobley. You to unmute.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this meeting. I actually live right here at 18th and South Dakota Avenue for 50 years. So I have firsthand knowledge of South Dakota because I'm on it all the time. I am very concerned, like all of you, when it comes to safety for not only car drivers, pedestrians, and all of our school kids and seniors. But I do feel that we need to be practical, because I cannot see us having a one lane going in and out of this city on South Dakota Avenue with the backup that we experience every day from 3, especially 3 to 6 p.m. going towards Costco. Ms. Carmen Williams talked about an evacuation route. In this crazy world of ours, with domestic terrorism, extreme weather conditions, I don't see us trying to have a major thoroughfare that would take us out of the District of Columbia, hopefully in safety, down to one lane. I'm also concerned about the climate emissions with traffic backed up on South Dakota Avenue. And I'm also concerned about the interior streets, which somebody already else has spoken about. Because if the traffic is jammed on South Dakota Avenue, they're going to come, like they're already coming now, onto 17th Street, 18th, Otis, Newton, all along the corridor. We have a lot of new residents in Brooklyn and Woodridge with young children. And these kids now have the enjoyment of being able to play outside on their sidewalks. And I would just hate to see us have a lot of interior traffic because people have to peel off of South Dakota Avenue. Thank you. Let's be practical. Let's not make this about cars versus bikes. Let's be practical and think about the long-term impact that this could have on everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mobley. I think the only thing that maybe I hadn't discussed in detail that you mentioned was the side streets. So we will be looking at traffic calming for those side streets where we think that that drivers are most likely to peel off and maybe take a neighborhood street. We can add things like speed humps. We can look at one-way conversions so that they can't actually go down that street. You know, the options are on the table for our traffic calming toolbox that we have. And then I just want to highlight again, there are options where, you know, if we find that there's too many people coming through a certain intersection and it's unsafe, we can certainly provide treatments to not allow through traffic through there as well.
Yes, well, thank you. We already had to put traffic calming for that on our street for that very reason. Thank you.
So much. Mr. Rutherford, you can unmute.
So we live south of Rhode Island, between South Dakota and Bladensburg, and one of the worst intersections besides Bladensburg is actually South Dakota and Vista, just north of Bladensburg, where everybody is trying to turn left onto Vista to cut up to Rhode Island. On a weekly basis, I'm either walking my dog or my infant daughter in a stroller, and we are almost hit by motorists ignoring the no turn on red signals, ignoring or trying to beat traffic to turn left, and speeding through Vista, anything along those lines. So has there been, besides consideration of the major turns like Rhode Island and Riggs and Bladensburg, which I completely understand need all of the work, and so this is not me trying to take away from anybody else's concerns. It's more some of those smaller streets that are also used for cut throughs, especially that one on Vista, which is really the only access that we have south of Rhode Island to get to the Rhode Island commercial thoroughfares. So has there been consideration there? And I know that there are also conversations to expand, potentially expand Metro into this neighborhood and further into Ward 5. How will any of this study affect any of those plans moving forward, or has that even been discussed?
So to your question about Vista and other key intersections, yes, those are going to be included, absolutely. We're going to be looking for safety improvements at all of the signalized intersections, as well as those that we see high crashes and that are unsignalized. So all of the intersections will be under consideration, and we'll look to safety improvements for all of them. As far as Metro adding into the neighborhood, so currently focused on bus because that's more in the near term. If there are future Metro rail stations, we can coordinate with WMATA. We'll learn that through our coordination process. But yeah. Let's go to so we missed some other folks. Oh, go to Chris M.
Thank you. Just one thing I wanted to also mention for consideration as you're looking at, especially the signalized intersections, is removing the last vestiges of quote unquote beg buttons that we have throughout the corridor. I know like a very frequent crossing for a lot of people coming from like say Brooklyn heading north is like 20th and South Dakota Avenue, where if you don't push the button, you have maybe 3 to 4 seconds to cross the street, which is barely enough time if you're first in line, let alone, you know, a pedestrian. So to the extent that all of the walk signals can just be automatic, timed with the light, ideally with the leading pedestrian indicator, would be a very huge and hopefully relatively easy and non-controversial win for everyone.
Yes, we will look at that as well. So again, road diet and redesign will include all modes. So we'll look at the pedestrian conditions and ways to improve walking conditions as well as driving and others. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Let me go to, I think Mr. Rodney was next, who hasn't spoken. All right, go ahead, Mr. Rodney.
Hi,
I'm a long time resident of the Lamont Ricks community. With issues for South Dakota, and I joined the call later.
Mr. Rodney, I think you're breaking up. Can't quite hear you.
I'm sorry. You allow for everyone to hear and then respond as well.
There you go. I can hear you now.
So I'm outside at my son's baseball game. My comments are in the chat. Can you read my comments so everyone can hear and respond to them as well?
Sure, yes. Let me find it.
Thank you.
Or Syra, do you have that?
There's a lot of conversation on the chat, so it is trying to keep up with all the conversation. Mr. Rodney, if you can message me, then I will read off your question.
Okay.
And I will message you right now directly so that you, so the chat is up there.
Okay, thanks. And while we're getting his comments and questions, go to Mr. Leroy Allen Swain.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Swain, go ahead, please.
Yes. First of all, let me just say thank you for taking my call. And I'm quite concerned. You know, you talk about equity. I've heard a lot of talk about equity. And I'm a jogger and live in the area for over 60 years, run every morning, also ride a bike. But I cannot understand how you're going to take South Dakota Avenue, because it does seem like it's a foregone conclusion that you will be building bike lanes. Everything that I've heard from this panel indicates that, whether you want to admit it right now or not, that the decision has been made. And I cannot accept that, because I think it's going to be a nightmare when you, and it's the only way you're going to do it, is make single lanes out of South Dakota Avenue, which is going to create nothing but a traffic nightmare. And the caller earlier said that the air quality of the air is going to be impacted. There's no way that you can mitigate that. And then the second thing I heard you said was that the side streets, well, we can look at the side street. What are you getting ready to do is transform our community for one simple process, and that is to build bike lanes. You're going to take side streets and everything else and transform that in order to, and make everybody else who've been lifelong residents of these areas just take away their freedom, and then have our lifestyle change just to accommodate a few cyclists going up and down South Dakota Avenue. And I cannot accept that. And the third thing is that when I look at this city, how this city has changed in terms, I look at 14th Street, which is a mess, a nightmare. And I look at other areas where you put sites, you got people parking in the middle of the street, nothing but traffic problems, creating traffic problems. And I can't understand for the world, this panel, and I don't know where you've done your research, but obviously you can do research to actually justify the things that you want to do. But I cannot accept one suggestion, and that is to take South Dakota Avenue and create bike lanes. I think it's going to make a nightmare of the area that I live in commuting from South Dakota Avenue, whether you start at Bladensburg Road, going to Riggs Road or not. You cannot get around the simple fact that it's going to be a nightmare.
Thank you, sir. So I do want to highlight for folks that I kept this in the back. I didn't think we wanted to go in this level of detail, but Federal Highway has done a numerous amount of studies on road diets across the country, and they've looked at all the conditions that have come up from Michigan, Louisiana, Mississippi, all across the country. And they've looked at road diet conditions both here in our region as well as other places and studied what the improvements were. And so on average, taking a 4-lane road down to 3 or 2 lanes, 3 considering the turn lane in the middle, that helps improve operations. But what we see overall is approximately 20 to 50% reduction in traffic crashes, and that's for all modes using the street. So research shows that it has been safe, and this is federal research. This is not my own research. I did not write this. It does help manage the street space for all day traffic volumes so that we don't see the speeding that we do see off peak and in the summertime when the schools are not loading and unloading during arrival and dismissal, slowing down the traffic from that perspective. It reduces common crash types, as research shows it. Side swipes, angle crashes from left and right turns from the active travel lanes. The street space can be repurposed for other uses. It doesn't have to be bike lanes. We are looking at that as an option, as 2 of the options for the configuration, given our commitments to Move DC, to climate action and Vision Zero. But we're also looking at other options as well. And then we have a recent study that came out of, I think it was University of Colorado, it was a 12-year study of protected bike lane projects that showed about a 50% reduction of crashes on average for those. So I wanted to highlight that road diets are proven to improve safety, and they have been implemented up to 25,000 average annual daily traffic with safety improvements. But they're based on the traffic numbers that we have that are pre-COVID data, which we saw even higher rates of traffic. South Dakota is definitely falls within that segment. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you, Christine. I have Mr. Rodney's comment. I'll read it off to you. It says, an option for South Dakota would be to make the road like sections of Rock Creek Park by making access from Bladensburg Road to Riggs Road, 3 lanes during AM and PM rush hour, west in the AM and east in the PM. That way you still have the cars and the bike lanes. Oh, I'm sorry. I went too far up. Okay, here's Mr. Rodney's official comment. He said, longtime resident of Lamont Riggs joined the meeting a little late and have a few questions. One, is this discussion about options or just a discussion about implementing lanes?
Yeah, so this is a discussion that we are kicking off this project, and we are looking at all the options that are typically looked at for road diets, especially considering our long-range transportation plan, what that directs us to do. So this is just kicking off the project, letting you all know that we're going to be looking into this even further, get your feedback on the existing problem areas. If you haven't already told us through TSI or other means, you can certainly reiterate your concerns on our map. But it is to share what we're going to be looking at, what we're going to be studying, and then moving forward into our next meeting coming in the fall. We'll come back to you with the concept options that we've studied, and then how they perform from traffic analysis, from crash, what we found from our in-depth crash analysis, and what we expect the safety improvements to be for all different modes.
Thank you. And then his other comment was just he's been here for multiple years, and he believes that bike lanes on an arterial road is already congested and it does not serve my community. And then there's already enough railway to accommodate buses from the metro station at Fort Taunton. Emergency vehicles that come up and down South Dakota and Riggs, plus the increased density from the Fort Taunton natural development and the other developments in Lamont Riggs. And I think the option when there's no backlane and the best is the best for for my community. The density in my community with development projects on the books now will only get worse, and there's only 3 roadways to get from North DC from the Lamont community into Washington. Um, pets. You have 2 Avenue in South Dakota. And if you change South Dakota by implementing the bike lane and reducing and it cuts off. So completely understand your feelings, Mr. Rodney. This is a study, so we will continue to study South Dakota and determine best implementations for a safe road for all users. And just want to note that we are coming close to 30 more minutes into the meeting, and we have multiple hands up. I just want to remind everyone that on June 1st, this Saturday in the morning, we will be on South Dakota for our meeting in person. So if there's a question or comment that you're not able to express today, DDOT staff will be there to hear you bright and early and engage with you. Also, for the upcoming, we will try to get through all the hands, but if you could have one specific question to Christine and to the team so that we can move on to the next person so we can get through all the questions, that would be great. I'll kick it back to you, Christine.
Thank you. And Sarah, can you put the information for Saturday's meeting, when, what time, the address in the chat so folks know? I thought I saw that question come through.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm sharing my screen. I don't see the whole chat yet, but we'll look at all the comments and questions afterwards. All right, so let me go to Lauren Rogers. You should be able to unmute.
I want to say thank you first to everyone who's involved in giving consideration to this, because it's a serious issue. It's one of the reasons that I became an ANC, was because I saw a mother trying to cross South Dakota Avenue at Vista, and it scared me half to death. So I agree that we need changes. I think that as we get closer to the exit to Route 50, I become more and more concerned that we don't impede traffic exiting the city, because I'm very concerned also about the evacuation routes. Maybe some people think that's not a thing to plan for, but maybe you didn't live in DC on 9/11, so maybe you don't remember how crazy it was. So I have those concerns. I also am not a big fan of blocking off the neighborhood streets, because I personally avoid driving on South Dakota Avenue in the way that I get around the neighborhood to go and do business on 12th Street, or to go to the veterinarian, or is to go by the neighborhood streets. So, to me, those are the ways that the neighbors get around rather than joining into the commuter traffic. So I just am concerned, though, that we already experience a lot of gridlock on this end of South Dakota at Bladensburg Road, at Rhode Island Avenue, and at Monroe Street almost any day of the week. But certainly on the holiday weekends or the heavy traffic volume times, those intersections are completely blocked. I don't know if I'm a fan of the bike lanes or not. I'm not a bike rider. I'm in my 60s. I don't anticipate becoming a bike rider, but I am not convinced that bike lanes are going to increase safety, because all over the city, I see people, demonstrating their frustration with the road diets when I come from work and I'm going down Constitution Avenue, there's a weird left hand merge that happens at 15th and Constitution because people will not just get in the lane and wait until they can go through the intersection. They have to go up in the turn lane, left turn lane, and then merge over to the right. I'm concerned that the road diets are creating more bad behavior. So I'm glad that you guys are doing a study so we can have facts instead of just all these thoughts that are flying around in our head. And I will be really looking forward to see what the studies bring forward so that we can know really what's the best direction to go. Because I think right now we all have our own personal opinion based on our personal experience, but I would like some data to go to go with my opinions. So I'm very thankful that you guys are doing this and taking a data-driven approach so that we can really know what the best way to go forward is, because I don't think we really know that at this point. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working through the process and really looking forward to the outcome of the study.
Thank you, Commissioner. So to your point about neighborhood streets and access, all options are on the table. We can certainly keep them open, but when we come back to you all, we're going to present some options for key locations where we've seen a high number of crashes, just to see, what you think about the different ways that we could manage the safety there. So definitely not the end all be all of blocking off the side street. It's just one way of managing, making sure that commuter traffic isn't really speeding through our neighborhoods. All right, thank you. Let's go to, I think Reed Porter was next. If others have already spoken, and if you could lower your hand, unless you have more things to add, but I want to get through anyone who hasn't put a comment. All right, Mr. Porter, you should be able to unmute. All right. Let me try. I'll go to the next in line. Rip and Pearl Preston. Unmute you. You can unmute yourselves. Oh, Mr. Porter. All right, there you go.
I can finally unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. First of all, thank you, Christine. You're doing a great job. My name is Reed Porter. I live at the intersection of South Dakota and Michigan, which is fun. I've been in DC for a little over 10 years, which I hope is long enough to entitle me to an opinion. It's certainly the longest that I've called any one place home. I support option 2 first and option 3 second. I had a question about sidewalks. It's kind of been a minute in the chat, but there was a suggestion that cyclists could just use the sidewalk to stay out of the streets and let cars go fast. I just wanted to point out that there's a bus shelter at Decatur that is right in the middle of the sidewalk. There's tree boxes that make it narrow in places, less than 2 feet. I'm sure neighbors would not like me riding my bike with my kids as they're coming out of their houses. Same goes for anyone with a stroller or a wheelchair or a dog or a child. And that's what we have to do right now, especially when we're coming from, when I come home from the Fort Todd Metro, I go down the sidewalks because I'm sure as heck not gonna ride on South Dakota as it is now. So my question, and I think you answered this right at the top, is will there be any change or any widening to the sidewalks as part of this project? I'm assuming that since there's no change to the curbs, that's out of scope, correct?
That's correct. We wouldn't be able to address the sidewalks. Now, future long term, if there if there was a streetscape project, that is something that we could look into. But while we're looking at the corridor, if there are tripping hazards or kind of minor improvements that we could make and adjust, we'll certainly send our asset management team out there to address those issues and try and fix those at kind of a smaller scale. But no, we do not have the funding to widen sidewalks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that just reinforces my support for option 2 or 3, not just for cyclists, but I'm also a driver in South Dakota, and I want cyclists, my neighbors, my friends, their kids, to be safely away from my car and everyone else's car for their safety. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, I'll go to, all right, Rip and Pearl, I will try you again to request that you can unmute. Try to unmute Mr. and Mrs. Preston. There we go. All right. We can barely hear you.
Thank you so much for taking our call. This has been a nightmare for me for many, many years, especially since Costco have been put over there, coming from Fort Lincoln Drive that crosses over Bladensburg Road. It's no question in my mind that the federal research people don't know what they're doing, but I also feel that they should also sit in that traffic, and it may work in another location, but not our location, because it is still a nightmare. To single it out to one lane, I have sat there and watched cars come over into the going straight that's sitting in the turning lane. A guy hit a car with a baby in the car because he jumped out of the turning lane and came straight. And I'm just surprised that the baby I didn't even realize was a child in the car until later. I guess the baby was crying, and he went to the car and came back with the baby in his arms, which I'm surprised. He should have had the baby in his arm when he got out the car. But I sit there a lot myself, just watching these people. The bus lane, when the bus comes in off Bladensburg Road to come on to Fort Lincoln, he doesn't have enough room to turn. So sometimes the cars have to reverse to let him through. But the traffic is backed up so badly in the mornings and the evenings because all these single lanes, they get confused and people get into the lanes and they still jump lanes. It's a mess. And to put a bike lane over there is going to be even more of a nightmare. Well, I'm talking about Costco traffic. I know we're jumping all around from different ones, but my concerns is the Costco traffic pattern. It is horrible. And I think that someone needs to come and sit in that traffic with us and just take notes and turn those 2 lanes back into the lanes that like they had them before. I've even stopped police officers and asked if they could ticket these people, or they can sit there and watch these people do this day in and day out. But nothing ever was done. I've been fighting this for years. So please do not put bikes lanes on South Dakota, because I'm like the other gentleman. I try not to go down South Dakota. We normally come through the neighborhood where they've messed up the traffic pattern. I suggest that the people need to come and sit in that traffic. They need to not do it just for one day, maybe for a week or 2, a month. It really needs someone's close attention in that area. I'm afraid someone's going to get hurt really, really bad.
Thank you, Ms. Preston. So our study area only stops at Bladensburg Road. It does not go down to the Costco area. But we will look at operations and safety conditions there. We do want to reduce the number and the amount and the severity of crashes that occur for drivers as well. We don't want children or anyone to be harmed, no matter how they're traveling. I think our next person is Jessica Hart.
Yes, and just a reminder, we only have 19 more minutes. We still have a couple of hands raised, so if you can make your comment or question brief, that will be appreciated.
All right, thank you. Yeah, my name is Jessica Hart. I'm the mother of 5-year-old Allison Hart, who was killed at 14th and Irving Streets here in Brookland. And I wanted to say thank you to DDOT for thinking this through in a way that is actually a proven way that saves lives. I'm hearing a lot of skepticism about federal research, but there is something called the safe systems approach. And in particular, in this instance, safe speeds and safe roads are really important. It only takes a second. It takes someone looking at their phone. It takes someone, pushing the dial on their radio. And that's the second when someone you love can be killed. And I think that we should all take a step back, because in the chat, there's a lot of pro and anti-bike lane, and think about the people who have been killed on South Dakota Avenue. My husband has hung a sign memorializing the person who was killed on Ingraham and South Dakota. And these are people whose loved ones their lives are forever changed and their lives are ended. And I think the point that we all want from this call is we want a safe South Dakota Avenue and a safe surrounding area. And so thank you, DDOT. I think all of the conversation here is really helpful. And, in particular, I think options 2 and 3, again, the research shows that bike lanes actually are a really, really good option for slowing cars and slowing drivers and providing a buffer so that all road users can use the road. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I think options 2 and 3 would really be a huge benefit to our neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. I'll go next to Elmira. Should be able to unmute.
I'm very saddened about this so-called or proposed study. Why did it take us to know about this 2 days before this meeting? That's one. I would like to have a response to that question. How was this message sent out to the agencies, or how was it sent out? Let me ask you that one first.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, sent a press release, and then our partners with the council member's office, maybe you all can talk about the specific outreach that you did. I know it was in the council members newsletter and others. We posted through DDOT channels and send out, to our listservs, I believe, right? Delando. Delando is your community engagement specialist, by the way, for your ward. But yeah, a staff for the council member, could you all respond how you helped amplify?
Are you asking a response from a council member?
The council member staff was involved. I think, they were involved in making sure that the word was getting out to everyone. We also posted it through our typical channels. We will be doing more outreach. This is not the last time that you'll hear from us. So this isn't the last opportunity by any means. This is just the very start.
Okay, okay, okay. I wanted to know that as first outreach. Yeah, sorry. Okay. I am 100% opposed to a 1-lane on South Dakota Avenue. I do not know the history of South Dakota to speak intelligently about it, but that block, I'm sorry, South Dakota from Riggs Road to Bladen to we keep saying Costco or going towards or to New York Avenue. There's no parking, no street parking. Why would DDOT consider changing that to put bike lanes? I have driven out Irving Street by Vets, the Met Star, which has totally disruption. And I can count the times I have seen bikers. And I'm not understanding, why is this biking becoming such a demand when we are riding on these streets, we don't see the bikers. Secondly and lastly, alternate streets is not the answer. You say, oh, we can put speed humps. Why change our streets to inconvenient those residents who chose to buy our properties on the streets where we live to accommodate commuters? Basically, I'm against it 100%. Putting our alternate streets available, we will still have children being injured. I'm sorry, people being injured. And I'm so sorry to hear. I know about the 14th Street poor little child was killed. But you're going to take it from one to put it in another one? That's not going to solve the problem. It's going to make a problem for the alternative streets. I'm done with that one. That's it. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you so much. So for the side streets, we're just talking about if we do see in our traffic analysis that there's a need to mitigate and deter drivers, especially commuters, from using neighborhood streets, we will use our traffic calming toolbox to do that, and we'll present the options to you all to try and get the best treatment for those locations. And again, we are still very much at the beginning of the study. These are the options. We are looking at an option that does not include a bike lane. We're looking at a bike lane, an option that does include bike lanes, as well as travel lanes and parking, and then one with no parking, and then travel lanes as well. So trying to explore a couple different options. If there are others that you'd like us to look into, we can look at the feasibility of those and include that. Let me go to Matt Schneider next.
Holding this meeting. I'm Matt Schneider. I'm a Brookline resident and wanted to comment in support of options 2 and 3 and in general for multimodal travel. I think it's important to note here that the purpose of a road diet is to slow cars down. Commuters and neighbors are still going to be traveling on South Dakota under any of these 3 options, but the goal is about slowing them down to reasonable speeds so that we all feel safe no matter how we travel. And I think many of the comments here are focused on creating gridlock. And so my question is whether DDOT can comment on whether it expects that these options will change the throughput of cars, because that's really what we're talking about. And whether it's 1 lane or 2 lanes, there are studies that focus on whether the number of lanes actually is correlated to the throughput of cars. And contrary to sort of what you would think, it's not always true that more lanes actually allows you to have more cars go through. So I'm wondering if DDOT can comment on that, and thank you again for the time.
Yeah, thank you. So what determines throughput is more so the signals and how many signals and how long those signals are. But we know that given the land use that I showed earlier, I'll go back to that. This is a neighborhood street, and it is used by commuters not from DC often. So we do want to redesign the street to better fit the neighborhood and the neighborhood context, and make it feel more like a neighborhood street, still accommodate the levels of traffic that we have. But in road diets, we do not see it often affect the throughput of traffic. But we do find that commuters, especially those from Maryland, Virginia, who may be using South Dakota Avenue to avoid other major routes, they may find different ways and choose different routes, especially kind of staying on the major interstates and so on. But we do not often see, especially given the level of traffic that we have now in our analysis, even in the higher traffic times pre-COVID, when we ran the traffic modeling, it did not affect traffic, and we were able to accommodate it. And again, the purpose of a road diet is to accommodate all day demand so that we don't see speeding off peak, and we actually have slower speeds all day and less crashes overall. Thank you. But we will present the results of the study for each of these options when we come back to you all in the fall. All right, we've got about less than 10 minutes left, so I'll go to our next, Christine Wilkinson.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I live in near Taylor on Brookland and have lived here for 5 years. And my grandchildren and my son and his wife take my grandkids to school, and that's one less car. And I think a lot of these I see in the morning, I see a tremendous amount of bike traffic with young children in the back or in car seats, in bike seats on the cars. And I think that it's a great way to alleviate a lot of the traffic. So I think putting bike lanes in would be an excellent way for us to be able to have less traffic in the morning and the afternoons, particularly when kids get out of school. And I think it's going to be important to make sure that they're safe, so cars are not going into those bike lanes. And I know that we can't prevent that under all circumstances, but on South Dakota, having the 2 lanes on both sides, and there's oftentimes areas that are blocked, it makes people move in the lanes, and that causes more problems. So maybe having one lane would be stop so much moving among lanes when people are driving. I also wanted to say I'm very impressed at the comprehensiveness of the study, and I do hope it moves forward, and I do support the bike lanes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilkinson. All right, we'll go to Emily Singer. You should be able to mute.
Commissioner Emily Singer-Lucio from 5803, and my SMD is on South Dakota, so I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate all the work and the studies you all have provided. I know this is a challenging issue between bicyclists and cars. You know, we've got seniors who obviously are going to, if they drive, still, you know, use cars, and you know, there are some seniors who don't use cars and use public transportation, and then there are you know, others who bike. And so we really do need to find a way to make this safe for everybody. And I do agree that, you know, bicycles on the sidewalks is not the safest option. So I appreciate all the options you're giving, and I also appreciate the opportunity to comment on these options and you know, investigate further what the best solution is going to be for the community. I do want to ask one question that I don't think we've talked about at all, and that is truck traffic on South Dakota Avenue. There is obviously, you know, South Dakota Avenue is a truck passway, and there's a significant amount of truck traffic, and the heavy loads, you know, do impact our community. And so I just wanted to know what DDOT's thoughts are on, you know, managing that level of traffic with these plans. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Commissioner. We are going to include our freight team on that, and they are aware of all of the freight movements throughout the city. In this process, they'll be a key stakeholder because South Dakota Avenue is absolutely a freight route. So what we do typically to design around freight routes when we do road diets is to make sure that the lane width is appropriate for a truck, but also not too wide so that a normal passenger vehicle feels like it's a highway. And then where there is parking, or if there is parking, and there's a business need and access for that, we are accommodating that with a wider parking lane. So we may need another foot or so for that truck driver to unload. But we run all the turn movements based on standard truck movements and their designs that we see coming through here, both a minimum and a maximum size of truck that's allowed. And then we do, of course, include our freight team and the typical design standards in that. So absolutely part of the process. All right, I think we may have, yep.
Yes, I was going to say, we are 4 minutes away from the Zoom ending. So just, I think we should wrap up. If there's no question, if the questions were not answered today, again, I am putting the in-person meeting on the chat. I'm also putting my email if you have any questions, concerns, or if, a question was not able to be answered today. And I'll leave it back to you to close off the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I know a lot more people are waiting to speak. Unfortunately, we did only set this for 2 hours. We thought 2 hours was maybe even too long. But please do come Saturday if you'd like to talk more. Please add your comments into the map that we have online as well. You can send us an email if maybe the map isn't the type of comment that you want to submit. So we really appreciate your time. I know from experience in leading these similar road diets before, we're not going to be able to accommodate everybody's needs and wishes through this corridor project. We're not moving curbs, we're not widening streets through this. But our purpose here is to do the best thing for South Dakota with your input and given the data and the research that we have as our basis for decision making. So looking forward to continue talking to you all, engaging with you all throughout the process. Again, this is just the very beginning. So we'll be meeting with ANCs and other key community groups as we go through. So thank you all for your time tonight. I hope you all have a safe evening and a really good weekend. Thanks, everyone.